Well, it is going to be a very interesting week for RFK Jr. and the MAHA movement. That's Make America Healthy Again. Because on May 24th, he is supposed to deliver a State of the Union address, State of the Industry report that will outline 8 different ways that he feels that the Health and Human Services Department is lacking currently and can do better. And then there will be like a 60-day action time period after that. But I don't know if you remember, but earlier this month, RFK Jr. made a little appearance on his BFF's TV show, Dr. Phil. And not only did I record it for you guys, but I fact checked every single statement that came from RFK Jr.'s mouth. I think you're going to be very surprised by the outcome. Shall we watch together? Shall we? Okay, let's go. So I sped it up a little bit so we could get to the meat of the matter. But this is actually just part 1 of 3, I believe, because I wanted to break it down into bite-sized pieces. But I'll be back a little towards the end to comment on a few different things. So watch, enjoy.
How's everybody?
Well, what am I, chopped liver? I mean, you don't act that way when I come out all the time. You got some fans in the house, I think.
Thank you.
Well, I'm a strong believer in what you're doing. And, people ask me about that. And they ask me what you're really like. And they say, does he believe everything that he says? Is he as committed as he says? Or is this all political rhetoric? And I can honestly tell people, having gotten to know you and spent the time that we have together, that not one bit of it is political rhetoric. It would be so much easier on you if you were talking politics, but these are things that you are seriously committed to and have been for a long, long time. You're not a Johnny-come-lately to this wanting people to be healthy again and bringing health back to America. This is something you grew up believing. You were raised to believe that you really needed to be in the homes of average Americans, helping people get things that they didn't have access to, get to places they couldn't ordinarily get. That's the way you were raised. Is that a fair statement?
It was a way, I was an environmental lawyer for 40 years doing advocacy. I started the biggest environmental group, clean water group in the world. And it's called Waterkeeper. And it's still, we're in 46 countries. We have 350 waterkeepers, each with a patrol boat on a local waterway that sues polluters. And that was my career. I got dragged kicking and screaming into this arena, which through the vaccine issue. In 2005, I published an article in Rolling Stone on thimerosal, which is a mercury-based preservative that is used in vaccines. It was taken out of some children's vaccines in 2003, but the same year, the CDC recommended the flu vaccine, which is loaded with mercury, for pregnant women in any month of pregnancy, for children at 6 months, and every year thereafter. And they're actually getting more. A kid today could get almost twice as much thimerosal as children in 2003. So there was never any break. And it's a neurotoxin, a very potent neurotoxin. It's associated with all kinds of neurological and autoimmune illnesses in kids. I wrote an article about that, and it really changed the course of my life. It wasn't something that I chose to do. And it was, you asked if this was a sort of a political choice for me. This was literally the worst career choice that I could have made. I lost friends immediately. I lost a lot of family members. I lost a lot of my allies in the environmental movement, relationships that I built up, political allies that I built up my whole life. And it's only, but I kept working on the issue, and it was only by hook and crook and divine providence that I ended up here. It certainly was not a plan.
No, I know that it wasn't. But now you've pushed back against authority in the United States, particularly authorities, particularly lately, with regard to health. You now are the health authority in the United States, sitting atop the Health and Human Services with 82,000 employees and a $1.7 trillion budget, which represents nearly a third of the entire federal budget. I mean, do y'all realize this is a third of the entire federal budget and 7% of the GDP?
This agency is twice the size of the Pentagon, which is the next largest.
Yeah, twice the size of the Pentagon. Our defense budget is dwarfed by it. And this is something that is so staggering to me because we have the highest healthcare cost and the poorest healthcare delivery of the other 37 developed nations that it's compared to. You intend to change that.
We spend 2 to 3 times what any other country in the world spends on healthcare, and we have the worst outcomes. We're literally the sickest people in the world. We have the highest chronic disease burden of any country in the world. During COVID, we had the highest death rate from COVID of any country in the world. So we had 16% of the COVID deaths in the United States, and we only have 4.2% of the world's population. And so it's a mystery why people are getting awards and kudos and applause for managing COVID in this country, because we literally did worse than any country in the world. Now, if you ask CDC, why did we do so poorly? They say, well, it's not our fault. It's because Americans are so sick, which, by the way, is their fault. But the CDC said the average American who died from COVID had 3.8 chronic diseases. And so they had obesity or diabetes or asthma, and then one other thing, or some other combination of chronic disease. And that's really what killed them. These were people who were so sick that they were basically hanging from a cliff. And COVID came along and stamped on their fingers and dropped them off. But they were already living lives that were burdened by sickness. And what we need to do as a country, we're really, if you look at the data today, the fertility of our kids is down. A teenager today has half the testosterone of a 64 or 68-year-old man. We have they have half the sperm counts of an older man. Our girls are hitting puberty 6 years earlier than historic levels. They're hitting puberty between 10 and 13 years old. And these are all, and the infertility is now going up in women and men. We have 74% of our kids cannot qualify for military service. So this is a national security issue. And we're spending, I met with the health minister of Indonesia this week, and he said in his country, they spend $3,300 a year per patient, and they have a lifespan, an average lifespan of 84 years old. We spend $12,000 a year per patient, per capita, and we have a lifespan of 79. We used to have the same lifespan as they did in Europe, but the Europeans have now moved 6 years ahead of us, and we've stayed stagnant.
So we're spending 4 times as much, and our life expectancy is going down. Something's wrong. I mean, clearly something's wrong. And the chronic disease among children has gone up. We're spending our insurance dollars, our healthcare cost in hospitals is basically managing chronic disease at this point.
Well,
it's not for acute care.
About 95% of healthcare costs are for chronic disease. When my uncle was president, 3% of Americans had chronic disease. Today, it's 60% too. When my uncle was president, and I was a 10-year-old boy, we spent 0 on chronic disease in this country. The first pill that people were supposed to take kind of on a regular basis was the pill. But we didn't even have treatments back then. But now it's 95% of what we're spending on healthcare is going to treat chronic disease. So it's destroying our economy. Healthcare costs rise every year by 2% greater than the economy is growing. So this is existential. We cannot keep this up. I talked to the biggest furniture manufacturer in Wisconsin the other day, and we were talking about the tariffs and whether those were going to help him bring manufacturing home. And he said, I don't care how high they raise the tariffs. I cannot manufacture in this country because of the healthcare costs. The healthcare costs that I spend on a single worker, I can pay the entire salary of a Vietnamese worker. Yeah. So I can't move it back here. So it's crippling our business. It's crippling our country. And we've got to figure out a way to reverse this trend.
Yeah. And let's talk about this. You talk about the chronic disease in children. And one of the things you've come up with is a list of the root causes. And I've made a graphic of it up here. So I've given you a big prompter you can use up here. The potential root causes of childhood chronic disease epidemic. And these are the things that you're putting on the list of things to work on, right? You're talking about diet, absorption of toxic materials, medical treatments, lifestyle, environmental factors, government policies, food production techniques, electromagnetic radiation, and corporate influence, and cronyism. Talk about some of these things this is where this is all coming from. This is a hit list of things that need to be addressed. And this is on your to-do list.
Yeah, on February 14th, President Trump signed an executive order that it's called the MAHA order to create a commission, a MAHA Commission, and these are the metrics that we are now studying. So we have 100 days to put out a report, and then another 60 days after that to put out a list of deliverables about what we're going to do to end it. And, I would say the top concern is the diet. We have 10,000 ingredients in our food, and in Europe, they only have 400. Most of the stuff we put in our food is banned in Europe. Oh, that is a crazy, that's a crazy ratio. And, if you look, for example, food dyes, which we've announced now, we're going to get rid of all the food dyes within 2 minutes.
Okay, so are you as surprised as I am that he's like batting almost 1,000? There are a couple false ones, but not too many. Now, this is where it went off the rails just a little bit, and here's why. I'll put up a little graph for you. So when he talks about we allow 10,000 ingredients in our food and the UK or the EU only allows around 400, he's not comparing apples to apples. So in America, under our FDA and GRAS and everything that we put in our food, we do have around 10,000 substances that are allowed in our food. We have the GRAS program. That is for another day. It is the worst, most backwards program they've ever developed at the FDA, but I digress. But in the EU, when we're talking apples to apples, they allow between 4,000 and 5,000 substances in their food. So we're at 10,000, they're at 4,000 to 5,000. Still, they're half as much as we are. We've got some work to do. But when it comes to additives, I don't see that we have those exact numbers just yet. So stay tuned on that.
Let me put it this way: the petroleum-based synthetic dyes. We can use vegetable dyes. That's what they use in Canada. That's what they use in Europe. If you buy Fruit Loops in this country, it is a completely different product than what you would buy across the border in Canada. The Canadian version of Fruit Loops, which is made by the same company, Kellogg's, has only vegetable dyes in it and a limited number of ingredients. In our country, it's all chemical dyes. And the food processors say, if we ask them, why are you poisoning American kids and you're not poisoning Canadian kids? And the answer, of course, is Canada won't let them. But why are they using those ingredients in our country? Because they're cheaper and because the colors are more vibrant. And they found that if the colors are more vibrant, kids want more of them. And that's the problem, is that I was involved kind of peripherally in the tobacco litigation back in the late 1980s. And the tobacco companies were at that time the wealthiest countries, the most cash-rich companies on earth. And they saw the writing on the wall. They saw that they were going to face litigation and regulatory headwinds. They saw that their customer base was shrinking, and they began to diversify. So they targeted the food companies. And by 1994, the two biggest food companies in the world were R.J. Reynolds and Philip Morris, or tobacco companies. They took thousands of scientists that were involved in making tobacco more addictive and more attractive, particularly to kids. And they transferred those science to their food division. And those scientists went into the lab and began creating ingredients and identifying ingredients that make food addictive. So putting in loads of sugar, which is addictive, and sodium, and then developing these ingredients that mimic natural flavors.
I'm like, still, I cannot believe it. So I can't believe I didn't know this. I'm a little embarrassed, actually. But I was a kid in the 90s. So, but yeah, apparently it's true that R.J. Reynolds and Philip Morris, the big tobacco mother bleepers, bought into the food industry and created all that dirty science that we have in our food today. All those chemicals that are petroleum based, all those toxic, addictive sugars and refined additives that are non-food, that are in our foods every day. And here's the thing. I did a little digging on the family tree. And so they acquired a lot of food brands and they divested a lot of food brands. And still, to this day, their most direct descendant is Kraft Heinz, which I'm so bummed about. But we got to do a little more investigating on Kraft Heinz because they are direct descendants of dirty tobacco. They're direct descendants of dirty science. They're Lunchables. I mean, we've heard them being banned in certain places for the additives that are in there. Anyway, we'll look into them some other time. But there are two other international companies, 3G and Mondelez, that were also divested from Philip Morris and R.J. Reynolds. And 3G is owned by a man named Horseface Lamans or something like that. Stay with me, folks. We got a new public enemy number one.